This is your ultimate 2-month-old baby guide with what you need to know about feeding, growth, development, and sleep.
Yes, we are working our way through the first year of baby's life as we do it ourselves as physician parents. And that means this week we will cover key milestones your 2-month-old should be hitting, how much your baby should be eating, and what to do if your baby isn't gaining weight.
Yeah, we're also going to share what we did to get all 3 of our babies to sleep 8 hours or more at 8 weeks of life. If this is your first time meeting us, I'm Kurt. I'm a board-certified pediatrician and dad of 3.
I'm Sarah. I'm a board-certified OBGYN and mom to those same 3.
Yep, and we are the Doctors Bjorkman. Welcome back. Again, this week is all about life with a 2-month-old, and we'll be sharing the things we've worked on a lot with our kids at this stage to help set them up for success.
And also some of the things we've struggled with along the way, which we will share in real life towards the end of this video.
Yeah, but first let's jump into the basics about normal development, feeding, and growth.
And we are going to talk about sleep too, and what we've done to actually be getting some sleep by now. This time between 1 and 3 months of age is kind of wild in many ways. Your little baby is transitioning from being this tiny little snuggle potato to actually having some meaningful awake time. They are getting a bit more interactive and maybe starting to smile back at you, that social smile. And they're making all those little adorable coos and gurgles and truly starting to explore things like their hands and things in the world around them. If you haven't started already, now's a great time to start reading a book to your baby every day. Talk to them about the world around them. Tell them what you are doing as you do it. It feels silly sometimes, but their brains are absorbing everything around them. Their vision is still expanding. We're kind of just getting past those first couple of feet, but they learn so much from just living in an interactive day with their caregivers.
Yeah, now having said that, this 2-month mark is also smack dab in the middle of what is one of the most challenging parts of early parenthood. In addition to your baby being more aware of themselves and their surroundings, their little bodies are changing rapidly too, and that doesn't always make for a happy baby. As it turns out, a huge part of counseling for parents at this stage is for you to be aware that from 6 to 10 weeks of age is classically the time when babies are the fussiest. This is that period when baby colic hits hardest for most. And so if you feel like your baby is all of a sudden fussier out of nowhere, you're not alone.
Those witching hours in the early evenings can hit really hard. So this is honestly a great time to check in with yourself, your partner, and your support system. It has been 2 months of middle of the night feedings, so many diapers, and you or your partner might have just freshly gone back to work. On top of that, now you have this really fussy baby sometimes.
Yeah, we've said this a few times in recent episodes, but don't be afraid to ask for help. And also just lean into your strengths for you as care provider.
Yeah, and that can look like someone's coming over to hold a crying baby at night because that gets exhausting, or someone is coming over to help with the little toddlers so you can be the one holding the crying baby.
Yeah, really just trying to figure out how to balance everything out. But in reality, remember there are times where all of baby's needs are going to be met and they may still be fussy. So if you're feeling frustrated, it is okay to set them down someplace safe for a moment for yourself to regroup. I've got this little mantra that I tell our crying child, and I also use this later when it's time for sleep learning too, that helps me. And it's just like, hey, you are fed, you are dry, you are comfy, and you are so, so very loved. And more than reassurance to baby, this also just serves as a reminder to me as parent that baby's needs are met and them crying from time to time is okay and expected.
Now that we are at that 2-month mark, often things are getting into more of a groove with feeding. If you're breastfeeding, often breast milk supply is pretty solidly established, and baby is usually technically better at nursing.
You've probably got the formula mixing down by this stage too if you're doing that.
Yes, you're thinking about that those ratios a little less. Having said that, for all 3 of our kids, we were working through some tongue and lip tie issues around this age with that definitely throws a wrench in a lot of things. For our second with Bo, especially we were doing a lot of occupational therapy to really work on developing his latch, both at the breast and with a bottle. And feeding difficulties are one of the easiest ways to end up with a fussy baby.
Yes, absolutely. A hungry baby is a fussy baby, regardless of any issues with unexplained colic that we mentioned is so common at this age.
Yep. So, how much does a 2-month-old usually eat?
Yeah, so in this window of 1 to 3 months of age, whether breast or formula fed, most babies are eating about 3 to 4 ounces of feed and still feeding about 6 to 8 times a day. This puts them fairly predictable in this window of 24 to 32 ounces total in a day. And by the end of this month, most all kids are pretty consistently hitting about 30 ounces every 24 hours. And they actually end up sticking with this daily requirement pretty consistently until they're about 9 months old, because that's when they're really starting to get a lot of solids. It's replacing that milk and making up a significant portion of their diet.
Yeah. Some other things I want to mention about feeding at this stage have to do with bottle feeding a breastfed baby. So as we talked about, I went back to work part-time pretty early because I missed my patients and my work out of the home. And so with that, something we had to think about a lot was breast milk storage. We have done a lot of episodes about breastfeeding with our first two that I encourage you to check out, and also have this video linked here about breast milk storage guidelines.
Yeah. We've also, with that, had to think a lot about bottle feeding too. For all 3 kiddos now, we started giving bottles early, really just trying to set up for that transition for when Sarah went back to work. And something to think about is, how do you breastfeed a bottle-fed baby?
Switch that.
How do you bottle feed a breastfed baby?
Yes.
And we actually have a video all about some special things to consider when bottle feeding breastfed babies, though, because you really want to not run into issues with nipple confusion and end up having them refusing either the bottle or the boob.
Yes, and there are some things to troubleshoot. Is the flow too fast or too slow? Is the milk warm enough? Do they need to burp more when they're taking a bottle? This time around, we really found that Hank really liked warm milk, much more than his older brother and sister had. And so we've tried a bunch of different bottles. So I'm going to link our favorite bottles that are really lactation consultant approved for breastfed babies, as well as this milk warmer that we have gotten for the babysitter to have when they are out and about, and we can put those in our Amazon link below. Yeah. Remember, it is a learning process to figure out each kiddo a little bit, no matter how many you have done before. So a common question is, how do you know that your baby is eating enough?
Yeah, so as always, you can know your baby is eating enough by seeing appropriate growth. And honestly, this is one of those big key things at that 2-month well child visit with your pediatrician. How are they growing?
Yes, so another big milestone for your 2-month-old baby is that 2-month-old well child check with your pediatrician.
Yep, so in addition to looking at that growth, which we're going to talk a little bit more, this is also the first time they're getting kind of a full round of vaccines. And we know there's a lot of people out there, a lot of you may be wondering, like, gosh, like, what is the evidence behind each of these vaccines? So we're actually doing a ton of work in the background right now, working on prepping a series, going through each of these vaccines, just so you've got that extra information of saying, like, hey, why are we giving this vaccine? What's the data behind it, reasons they need it, or any potential risks?
Yeah. So at each of these pediatrician visits, in addition to that, the pediatrician does some specific things. And that is, they are going to measure baby's length, their weight, and their head circumference. And then they plot each of these on a growth curve. And it's this graph to kind of make sure that baby is following along and keeping up where they're supposed to.
Yeah, and by this 2-month mark, your baby should really be following pretty closely along with their curve. They found out, like, oh, this is the line they're going to continue on for the rest of this first year of life. And really, if they aren't hitting their curve, it's a good time to start looking into why. Most of the time, they just need to eat more, but talk with your pediatrician about other causes. Is there some reason they might be burning more calories? Are they having heavy breathing troubles? Is their heart healthy? Or is there any problems with actually absorbing the nutrients and calories themselves? Either they've got excessive vomiting, diarrhea, loose stools, or other potential medical causes that could be keeping them from having normal growth.
The best part about getting some of that feeding and growth down is that when those things are more established, it makes nighttime sleep so much more doable for you and baby.
Yes, with so many questions about how do you get your baby to actually sleep.
Yeah, so Kurt mentioned that at this age, most babies need somewhere between 24 and 30 ounces of breast milk or formula per 24-hour day. And as it turns out, if you can fill their little tanks up during the day and get that intake in between 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. or whatever your schedule is, they don't necessarily need to eat overnight by this age.
Yes. Now, of course,
Assuming they're grown well.
Yes,
And back
absolutely.
to birth weight and all those things. Yes.
Of course, your baby still may want to get up in the middle of the night just for a snack or to hang out with their favorite people in the whole world. But this age, our kiddos were actually able to give us sleep on average about 1 hour stretch for every week old they were. So what does that mean? For instance, when they were 6 weeks old, they were on average sleeping for 6 hours at a stretch at night. When they were 8 weeks old, they were sleeping about 8 hours at a stretch.
Yes. There is a lot that goes into sleep at this age. So check out our newborn sleep episodes if you have missed it, because now is when we are really working to lay the groundwork for sleep learning or sleep training that can happen at that 4 to 6 months of age mark.
Yeah, and we went into this in a ton of detail about how do you set up the environment for sleep? How are you using your schedule? And for us at this stage, really thinking about, hey, getting ready for sleep learning, sleep training coming up means we're using those early morning naps, especially when there's a ton of sleep pressure, to put baby down a little drowsy but awake as they're learning to put themselves to sleep. We're building those bedtime routines and common cues like using a sleep sack or singing the same songs before each put down.
Yes. So if you have no strategy at this time, that is okay. But a lot of these little things can really help set your baby up for more success with sleep in the months to come.
So this 2-month stage, as we mentioned, can be really hard. Life is good. Life is good. You've got this little baby. It's fun. But there's so much that's hard.
I mean, but this is when, Hank smiled at me while I was doing a diaper change. And when they start giving a little bit back, it just is so fun and they're so sweet. Sleeping a little more has been
great.
Great.
The putting together stretches. If you haven't watched our sleep episode, go watch it. Just little things to say, hey, how can we try to put together some hours of sleep at night so that you can get a full REM cycle?
Start to feel a little more like a person again. I know I was I feel like I don't look this tired because I'm getting some more sleep now. But so it goes.
Yeah. I think this stage is different for every kid and for every parent. The purple crying piece. Each kid was so different. This time around, Hank had 6 days where he's extra fussy.
Hank, this wasn't that bad.
This just happened. I was, there was a couple nights where I was bouncing him for almost 2 hours to try to get him down. And so there's definitely those times. So learn to know which person has which strengths.
Yes.
For us, most of the time, hey, I'm gonna do the household stuff and wrangle the toddlers.
Yeah. The newborn is more my jam.
Yeah.
I have the boobs. It's just often easier for me to do that. So there's more divide and conquer once you have a couple kids.
But sometimes give each other a break. Hey, I'm gonna do bedtime for the baby these nights so you can be out in the daylight.
Yes, because a difference between it's when nap time or bedtime put down takes forever. Kurt is definitely better in the purple crying phase or crying in general, in where he's babies cry, and I think that's the pediatrician in him, where I have had times where I get in my head that crying is failure, this baby won't stop crying, this is just really, really hard, I'm failing.
Babies cry, and that's that little mantra of hey, you're fed, you're dry, you're comfy, you are so loved, and you've got your little baby, and sometimes you're the number of songs we sang to Cecilia, our first,
when we were thinking about their different phases of purple crying, Bo was the worst. Our second was the worst.
He's the sweetest kid.
He is such a doll. He's so sweet. This is not, this season, these couple weeks are not a reflection of what your toddler will be like. I remember you're going to your fellowship graduation, and my parents came, and my dad held Bo for 3 hours, and he just cried the whole time. He just cried. And that's real. There's a lot of, I don't know what the word is there. There's a lot of guilt or feelings, or that's really hard as a mom, just because A, it's exhausting, and then B, you feel then you're putting this hard on someone else to hold your crying baby. That was a really hard thing with Bo, was that I knew this baby was really hard and like not necessarily a fun time for someone to take care of if I wanted to leave or do something or like go to Kurt's graduation. But I think the people, well, my sister, my mom, they're just like, it's just a baby. They're crying. We're here. We love them. This is okay.
Yeah.
They're like, we'll be fine, Sarah.
Yeah.
And so I think like,
lean into your strengths and also like use your support system.
Yep.
Like, cause you've been working really hard for 2 months.
Yep.
And it's like starting to stack up.
It is.
You know, the other thing that like, you know, we have both gone back to work, you know, we like kind of staggered where like I went to back to work, and then like when she went back kind of in her full-time role, like now like I took a couple weeks off with that and just like trying to like ease that transition as our family's adjusting, because it's a big adjustment. We're like, hey, like we're like caring for a newborn and also like doing our full-time jobs again.
Yeah.
And so give yourself grace. Like life is hard, but it's also so good. And
So good, yes.
this hard is going to change.
Yes.
Like it's going to be a different hard. But
yes. Just because it's hard doesn't mean it's bad.
Yeah.
It's just hard, and it is okay that it's hard. There are lots of good things worth doing that are hard.
Absolutely.
And so
This is one of them.
That may be the season you're in. So hang in there. If you need to set the baby down and they're crying, it's okay. They're fed, they're loved, they're dry. You are meeting their needs. It just happens right now. Talk to your pediatrician if you have concerns that it's more than that, and hang in there. All right, so that was our pretty focused guide of what to expect with having a 2-month-old. Hope that helps you kind of know what's coming and tips for getting through.
Yeah, this month can be one of the hardest, and please know that this hard is temporary. There are some really fun weeks and months coming ahead.
Thank you for joining us on our wild adventure. Please make sure you are subscribed. We are working on lots more baby content, as well as some toddler content coming at you soon, summer topics, and even a series going through all of those childhood vaccines, all of those questions you want to know. We are going to dive deep into it.
Yeah, we'll see you next week, guys. Bye.
We're doctors.
But not your doctors.
Anything we've said in this video is for education or entertainment purposes only.
It is not medical advice.
Any specific medical questions you have should be directed to your provider.